October 15th, 2023, when homeless Marine veteran Daniel Carter collapsed from exhaustion next to a stranger's Harley Davidson outside a Nevada truck stop. He never expected to wake up surrounded by 47 leather-clad bikers forming a protective circle around him. The owner of that motorcycle had made a single phone call that would change Daniel's life forever. But what could a broken-down veteran possibly have that would make an entire motorcycle club drop everything to protect him? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Daniel's eyes cracked open to the rumble of dozens of Harley engines idling in perfect synchronization. The morning sun blazed over the Mojave Desert, but the leather-vested giants surrounding him blocked the harsh light. Their patches read Iron Riders MC, with various chapter locations stitched beneath. Reno, Carson City, Las Vegas, Phoenix. "Easy there, Marine," a voice said from directly above him. A bearded man in his 50s knelt down, his vest identifying him as Cage, President Reno Chapter. "You're safe. Nobody's gonna hurt you here." Daniel's confusion turned to panic. He scrambled backward against the chrome of the Harley he'd collapsed beside 12 hours earlier, his weathered hands searching for the backpack that contained everything he owned. "I wasn't stealing anything, I swear. Just needed a place to rest my head." Cage held up both palms. "We know, brother. That's exactly why we're here." The previous night felt like a fever dream now. Daniel Carter, 41 years old, had been walking along Interstate 80 outside Fernley, Nevada, when his legs simply gave out. 3 days without food and 2 nights without sleep had finally caught up with the body that had once carried 80 pounds of gear through Helmand Province. His story wasn't unique, just tragic. Daniel had served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine Corps combat engineer, the kind of soldier who cleared IEDs while enemy fire cracked overhead. He'd come home in 2015 with a Purple Heart, a limp from shrapnel embedded too close to his spine to remove, and nightmares that made sleep feel like enemy territory. For 6 years, he'd held it together, married his high school sweetheart Emily, worked as a construction foreman in Reno, went to VA appointments when the pain got too bad. They'd even started talking about kids. Then came the accident that wasn't his fault. A drunk driver ran a red light on a Tuesday afternoon, turning Daniel's pickup truck into scrap metal and his back injury into chronic agony. The surgeries ate through their savings. The opioid prescriptions his doctor swore would help turned into an addiction that destroyed everything the war hadn't. Emily left after he sold her grandmother's ring to pay for pills he didn't even remember taking. He didn't blame her. The foreclosure notice came 30 days later. By winter of 2022, Daniel was living in his car. By spring, he didn't have a car anymore. That's how he ended up walking the Nevada highways with a purple backpack containing 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, his discharge papers, Emily's last photo before she deleted him from her life, and a bottle of Tylenol that barely touched the pain anymore. Last night, around 11 p.m., he'd spotted the Love's truck stop glowing like a mirage off exit 48. His feet were bleeding through the duct tape he'd used to patch his worn-out boots. The temperature was dropping fast. October desert nights could hit freezing. The parking lot was full of big rigs. But one vehicle caught his attention. A pristine 1985 Harley Davidson Softail, cherry red with custom chrome. It was parked away from the main lot, near a patch of scrub brush. More importantly, it was next to a concrete wall that would block the wind. Daniel knew it was wrong. He knew he shouldn't, but hypothermia doesn't care about pride. He'd curled up on the opposite side of the motorcycle, using his backpack as a pillow, trying to make himself invisible. The last thought before exhaustion claimed him was an apology to whoever owned that beautiful machine. "Sorry for being a failure," he'd whispered to no one. "Sorry for all of it." Now, in the harsh morning light, surrounded by dozens of bikers, he realized his mistake might cost him more than dignity. "What's your name, Marine?" Cage asked, his tone firm but not unkind. "Daniel Carter, sir. Lance Corporal, 1st Combat Engineer Battalion." The military response came automatically, muscle memory from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. Cage's expression shifted. Recognition, maybe respect. You cleared routes in Afghanistan? Daniel nodded, confused about where this was going. So did my son. Cage's voice cracked slightly. Marcus. He didn't make it home from his third deployment. AED outside Sangin, 2013. The words hung in the desert air. Daniel understood immediately the weight of survivors' guilt, the randomness of who came home and who didn't. The Harley you slept next to? Cage continued, gesturing to the red Softail. That belonged to Marcus. I've been restoring it for 10 years. Last night was the first time I rode it since he died. Stopped here because I couldn't make it all the way to the Marine Memorial in Barstow without breaking down. Daniel's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You needed shelter. You needed safety. You needed someone to give a damn. Cage stood up, his full height imposing. When I came out this morning and saw a Marine sleeping next to my son's bike, at first I was angry. Then I saw your discharge papers sticking out of your pack. Saw the Purple Heart pin on your backpack strap. He pulled out his phone, showed Daniel a photo. I made one phone call to my VP, told him a brother was in trouble. 2 hours later, this is what happened. Daniel looked around at the 47 bikers, all standing silent, all watching him with expressions that weren't pity. Something else. Something he hadn't seen in years. Respect. Why? Daniel's voice broke. I'm nobody. I'm just another homeless vet who couldn't keep his life together. Cage crouched back down. Oh, he leveled now. My son died protecting Marines like you. You think I'm gonna let one of his brothers freeze to death in a parking lot? Not while I'm breathing. He extended his hand. Here's what's gonna happen, Daniel Carter. You're gonna accept some help. And we're not taking no for an answer. Daniel stared at the offered hand, his mind reeling. 12 hours ago, he'd been invisible, another broken piece of human wreckage that society stepped over. Now an army of bikers was treating him like he mattered. His hand trembled as he reached out and grasped Cage's calloused palm. Okay, Daniel whispered. Okay. Cage Mitchell had been riding for 6 hours straight when the tears finally came. The cherry-red Softail beneath him vibrated with the familiar rhythm that Marcus used to describe as riding thunder. For 10 years, this motorcycle had sat in Cage's garage, covered with a tarp, untouched, except for the occasional maintenance to keep it from dying completely. Every bolt, every piece of chrome represented hours in that garage, talking to a son who couldn't answer back. Tonight was supposed to be the breakthrough. The Marine Memorial run to Barstow, California was scheduled for tomorrow. A 400-mile ride honoring fallen combat engineers. Cage had finally worked up the courage to take Marcus's bike. To complete the journey his son never got to finish. But somewhere between Reno and Fernley, grief hit him like a freight train. He'd pulled off at exit 48, hands shaking too badly to keep riding safely. The Love's truck stop parking lot was busy with late-night travelers, but Cage steered the Softail to the quieter edge. Near a concrete retaining wall where he could fall apart without an audience, the engine ticked as it cooled. Cage sat there, helmet still on, shoulders heaving with 10 years of unshed tears. Marcus had been 23 when the IED tore through his convoy. 23 years of Little League games, high school graduations, Marine Corps boot camp pride, all of it ending in a folded flag and a knock on the door that destroyed his wife Patricia's heart. She died 2 years later. The doctors called it a stroke, but Cage knew better. You could die from a broken heart. He'd watched it happen. I can't do this, Marcus, he whispered into the empty desert night. I thought I was ready, but I can't. That's when he noticed he wasn't alone. At first, Cage thought it was just a pile of discarded clothes against the wall. Then he saw it move. A man, curled into a tight ball on the cold concrete, shivering despite being wrapped in what looked like every piece of clothing he owned. Cage's first instinct was anger. Homeless people around his bike meant potential theft, trouble, complications he didn't need tonight. He climbed off the Harley, ready to roust whoever it was and send them away from his grief and his son's motorcycle. But as he got closer, details emerged that changed everything. The man's backpack, purple and weathered, had something pinned to it. Even in the dim parking lot light, Cage recognized the distinctive purple ribbon with a small gold heart. A Purple Heart medal. Below it, barely visible, were words written in faded Sharpie on the pack's fabric. USMC, Helmand Province 2012-2013. Cage froze mid-step. The man wasn't just homeless. He was a Marine, a combat veteran, possibly even a brother who'd served in the same region where Marcus had died. Cage's anger evaporated, replaced by something more complicated, a mixture of protectiveness, rage at a system that had failed this man, and a strange sense that Marcus had somehow led him to this exact spot at this exact moment. He knelt down carefully, not wanting to startle someone who might have combat reflexes. Up close, he could see the man was younger than he'd first appeared, maybe early 40s, with a face weathered by exposure and hardship. His breathing was shallow, and his lips had a bluish tint that Cage recognized from his years as a volunteer EMT. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Mild hypothermia, not immediately life-threatening, but dangerous if left untreated in dropping temperatures. Cage's phone showed 11:52 p.m. The temperature had already fallen to 38 degrees and was still dropping. This Marine, whoever he was, wouldn't survive the night without intervention. For a long moment, Cage sat back on his heels, studying the sleeping veteran. Part of him wanted to wake the man up, offer him money for a motel room, and continue his own private grieving. That would be the easy solution, the one that let Cage return to his emotional breakdown without complications, but that's not what Marcus would have done. His son had written countless letters from Afghanistan about the Marines in his unit, about how they took care of each other no matter what. "We don't leave brothers behind, Dad, not in combat, not in life." Marcus had underlined those words in his final letter home, the one that arrived 3 days after his death. Cage made his decision. He stood up, walked back to his bike, and pulled out the emergency blanket he always carried in his saddlebag, a silver thermal wrap designed for accident victims. He returned to the sleeping veteran and carefully draped it over him, tucking it around his shoulders without waking him. Then Cage did something he hadn't planned. He sat down next to the concrete wall, positioning himself between his son's motorcycle and the sleeping Marine. If anyone was going to bother this veteran tonight, they'd have to go through a 6'2" former Marine first. As he settled in for a long night, Cage pulled out his phone. His VP, a former Army Ranger named Thomas Reaper Walsh, answered on the second ring. "Cage, you okay? Thought you'd be halfway to Barstow by now. Reaper, I need you to get the word out. Rally the chapters. Nevada, California, Arizona. Everyone who can ride." There was a pause. "What happened? You in trouble?" Cage looked at the sleeping veteran, then at Marcus's motorcycle gleaming in the parking lot lights. "I found one of Marcus's brothers. He's in bad shape, sleeping outside in freezing weather. He's got a Purple Heart and Helmand Province written on his pack." Reaper's voice changed immediately. All business. "Where are you?" "Love's truck stop, exit 48 off I-80 east of Fernley. I need bodies here by dawn." "A show of force, Reaper." "This Marine needs to know he's not invisible anymore. How many do you want?" Cage thought about his son, about all the Marines who didn't make it home, about the ones who did make it home but got lost anyway. "Everyone who can roll. I want this brother to wake up and understand that we don't leave Marines behind." "Copy that. I'll make the calls. Ite dawn, maybe 40 to 50 bikes. Reaper, tell them to come respectful. This isn't about intimidation. It's about showing a brother he matters." "Understood, Prez. See you at sunrise." Cage ended the call and settled his back against the cold concrete wall. Through the night, he watched the Marine sleep, watched his son's motorcycle stand guard, and waited for dawn. Around 3 a.m. the veteran stirred, mumbling something that sounded like incoming, before settling back into troubled sleep. Cage recognized the signs. Combat nightmares never really went away. You just learned to function despite them. At 4:15 a.m., Cage heard the first Harley approaching from the west. Then another. Then a whole pack of them. their engines throttled down to respect the early hour, but unmistakable in their purpose. The Iron Riders were coming. By 5:30 a.m., 47 motorcycles had rolled into the parking lot, their riders taking positions in a loose protective circle around the sleeping veteran and Marcus's bike. Some were active-duty military. Others were veterans from Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. A few were civilians who'd never served but believed in the club's mission, protecting those who'd protected them. As pink light began to touch the Nevada mountains, Cage stood up and stretched his stiff muscles. The Marine was still sleeping, exhausted beyond what one night's rest could heal. "All right, brothers," Cage said quietly to the assembled riders. "When he wakes up, we show him respect. No pity, no judgment. Just brotherhood." Reaper nodded. "What's the play?" Cage looked down at the sleeping man. "We offer him something he's been missing. Hope." At 6:47 a.m., as the desert sun finally cleared the mountains, Daniel Carter's eyes began to open. The rumble of idling Harleys filled the morning air, and 47 Iron Riders stood ready to prove that no Marine gets left behind, not in combat, and not in the battles that come after. Reaper pulled out his phone as Daniel Carter sat processing the overwhelming scene around him. The VP's fingers moved quickly across the screen, pulling up the Iron Riders National Network, a private messaging system connecting 127 chapters across the western United States. "Cage, are you good if I document this?" Reaper asked, nodding toward Daniel. Cage looked at Daniel. "Brother, we've got members across 11 states who support homeless veterans. Would you be comfortable if we shared your story? No pressure, and we won't use your face if you don't want to." Daniel's hands trembled as he held the bottle of water someone had given him. "Why would anyone care about my story?" "Because you're not alone," said a female voice. A woman in her 30s stepped forward, her vest reading Valkyrie Road Captain, Las Vegas chapter. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "I'm Christina Hayes, Army medic, 3 tours in Iraq. Been where you are. Slept in my car for 8 months after I got back. These people saved my life." Daniel stared at her, then at the dozens of faces around him, each one weathered, each one carrying their own story written in scars, both visible and hidden. "Okay," he whispered. "If it helps someone else." Reaper filmed a brief video. The sunrise, the circle of motorcycles, Cage's hand on Daniel's shoulder. He narrated simply, "At 2 a.m. this morning, our president found a Marine combat engineer sleeping in a Nevada parking lot to survive freezing temperatures. Purple Heart recipient, Helmand Province veteran. By dawn, 47 Iron Riders stood guard. No Marine gets left behind. If you can ride, we need you at Love's truck stop, exit 48. A80, bring resources." He posted it to the national network at 7:22 a.m. By 7:35 a.m., the responses started flooding in. Phoenix Chapter 42 members, rolling now. ETA 4 hours. Bringing medical supplies and clothing. Sacramento Chapter 38 members, mobilizing. Have contacts at VA housing. ET 3 hours, Boys Chapter 29 members, en route. Bringing food supplies and camping gear if needed short-term. Cage's phone started ringing. The first call was from Richard Bull Pemberton, president of the Reno chapter and a retired Army colonel who'd spent his post-military career advocating for veteran services. "Cage, I saw Reaper's post. That Marine, what's his full name? Daniel Carter, Lance Corporal 1st Combat Engineer Battalion." There was typing on the other end. "Running him through the VA database now. I've got clearance through my advocacy work." "Okay, here we go. Daniel James Carter, honorably discharged 2015, Purple Heart Combat Action Ribbon. Last known address. Damn, Cage. His last VA appointment was 14 months ago. He's been off the grid. What do we do?" Cage asked. "I'm making calls. Give me 20 minutes. The second call came from an unexpected source, a man named Dr. Andrew Chen, who ran a private addiction recovery clinic in Reno. He'd seen Reaper's post through his own veteran support network. "I don't know your organization," Dr. Chen said, "but I know combat trauma. If this Marine needs detox, rehab, anything, I've got a bed available, no charge. I'm a Navy vet, Gulf War. We take care of our own. Cage felt his throat tighten. Doc, I'll pass that along. Thank you. At 8:03 a.m., a news van from the local Reno television station pulled into the parking lot. A reporter named Jessica Morales had been monitoring police scanners when she heard chatter about a large motorcycle gathering at the truck stop. What she found wasn't trouble, it was a story. Mr. Mitchell, she approached carefully. I'm Jessica Morales, KRNV News. Can you tell me what's happening here? Cage looked at Daniel, who nodded slightly. We're protecting one of our brothers, Cage said simply. This is Lance Corporal Daniel Carter, a Marine who served in Afghanistan. He's fallen on hard times. We're here to make sure he knows he's not alone. Jessica's cameraman began filming, but she held up a hand. Before we air anything, I want Mr. Carter's consent. Sir, are you okay with us sharing your story? Daniel looked at the faces around him. Veterans, bikers, people who'd been strangers an hour ago, but now stood as his defenders. If it means other vets get help, yes. The segment aired during the 9 a.m. local news. By 9:45 a.m., it had been picked up by the Associated Press. By 10:30 a.m., it was on CNN, homeless Marine wakes to 47 bikers standing guard in Nevada. The story exploded across social media. Veterans groups shared it. Active duty military members commented. Civilians who'd never thought about veteran homelessness suddenly paid attention. At 9:15 a.m., while Daniel was being checked by Christina, who'd maintained her EMT certification, Cage received a call that changed everything. This is Colonel Sarah Brennan, Nevada National Guard. Am I speaking with Cage Mitchell? Yes, ma'am. I saw the news coverage. Lance Corporal Carter served with distinction. What does he need? Cage looked at Daniel, sitting on the concrete, accepting a sandwich from one of the riders. Everything, Colonel. Housing, medical care, a path forward. I'm mobilizing resources through the Nevada Veterans Coalition. We have emergency housing available through the Reno VA. I'm also contacting employment services. We have a program placing veterans in skilled trades. What's his background? Construction foreman before his accident. Perfect. We have contractors desperate for experienced supervisors. Give me until noon. At 10 a.m., the Phoenix chapter arrived. 38 bikes, their riders carrying duffel bags of clothing, toiletries, and basic necessities. Their president, a Vietnam veteran named Luther Smoke Williams, embraced Daniel wordlessly. The old Marine's eyes were wet. Welcome home, son, Smoke whispered. We've got you now. At 10:45 a.m., the Sacramento chapter rolled in with 29 members. Their road captain, Maria Gonzalez, was a caseworker for veteran services. She sat with Daniel, clipboard in hand, cutting through bureaucratic red tape that typically took months. Daniel, I'm getting you into the system today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Housing application, expedited VA benefits review, emergency medical assessment. You'll sleep in a real bed tonight. Daniel couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. By 11:30 a.m., over 90 motorcycles surrounded the truck stop. The parking lot had become an impromptu veteran resource center. Someone had set up a canopy. Folding tables appeared with food, water, clothing sorted by size, even hygiene kits assembled by a veteran women's auxiliary group. Local businesses started arriving. The truck stop manager, a Navy veteran named Tom Fletcher, provided free meals. A nearby hotel owner, whose son served in the army, offered a room for 2 weeks, no charge. My kid's in South Korea right now, the hotel owner said. I'd want someone to help him if he needed it. At noon, Colonel Brennan called back. Mr. Mitchell, I have a studio apartment available in Reno through the VA's supportive housing program. Move in ready. Daniel can have it today. I've also connected with Henderson Construction. They're looking for a safety supervisor. If Daniel's interested, they'll interview him next week. Cage looked at Daniel, who was surrounded by Marines, soldiers, airmen, and sailors, all of them forming a human shield against the world that had forgotten him. Did you hear that, brother? Cage asked. Daniel nodded, unable to find words. At 12:47 p.m., a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. A man in his 60s stepped out wearing a Semper Fi cap. He approached Daniel directly. "Lance Corporal Carter, I'm Robert Patterson. I'm a retired Marine officer, and I run a veteran advocacy foundation. I'd like to fund your first 3 months of rent and provide a stipend for food and necessities while you get back on your feet." No strings attached. Daniel finally found his voice. "So why are you doing this?" Patterson's expression softened. "Because I lost my son in Fallujah. He was a combat engineer just like you. His name was Michael. I couldn't save him, but I can damn sure help save you." The parking lot had transformed from a place of Daniel's desperation into a gathering point for hope. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, more bikes arrived, more resources materialized, and more people proved that Brotherhood wasn't just a word. It was action. Reaper stood next to Cage, watching the scene unfold. "Brother, you started something here." Cage shook his head, looking at Marcus's red softail gleaming in the sunlight. "No, Marcus started this 10 years ago. We're just finishing what he began." By 2 p.m., Daniel Carter, who'd gone to sleep invisible and alone, was standing at the center of 143 bikers. Surrounded by resources, support, and the undeniable proof that he mattered, the ripple effect had only just begun. Daniel Carter sat in the cab of Reaper's pickup truck, door open, staring at the keys to an apartment he hadn't seen yet. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. "I can't do this," he said suddenly. Cage, who'd been loading Daniel's meager belongings into the truck bed, stopped mid-motion. "Can't do what, brother?" "Any of this. The apartment, the job interview, all these people helping me." Daniel's voice cracked. "You don't understand what I've done. Who I am now." The parking lot had mostly cleared. Most riders had left to return to their lives, their mission accomplished. But a core group remained. Cage, Reaper, Christina, and a few others who sensed Daniel's breakthrough was still incomplete. Cage climbed into the truck beside Daniel, closing the door to give them privacy. "Talk to me." "I sold everything," Daniel whispered, staring at his scarred hands. "Emily's grandmother's ring, an antique from 1940 that survived World War II. Emily wore it every day after her grandmother died. It was the only thing she asked me never to sell, and I pawned it for $300 to buy pills I don't even remember taking." His voice grew harder, angrier at himself. "I stole from a construction site, copper wire, because I needed money. Got caught, lost my foreman job, got banned from the union. I lied to the VA about my addiction because I was scared they'd cut off my disability. I pushed away everyone who tried to help because I was convinced I didn't deserve help." Cage listened without interrupting. "The last time I saw Emily, she begged me to go to rehab. She had the papers filled out, had talked to her insurance, everything ready. And I screamed at her, called her terrible things, told her she didn't understand what real pain was." Daniel's shoulders shook. "She left that night, changed her number. I don't blame her. I was poison." He finally looked at Cage. "So you see, I'm not worth all this. I'm not some hero who fell on hard times. I'm an addict who destroyed his own life and hurt everyone who loved him. These people bringing me apartments and jobs, they think I'm someone I'm not." Cage was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "You want to know what I did after Marcus died?" Cage asked. "I drove to the liquor store and bought 2 bottles of Jack Daniels. Drank them both in my garage with my service pistol on the workbench. I sat there for 6 hours, trying to decide if Patricia would be better off without me." Daniel's eyes widened. "My wife found me passed out. She called Reaper, who drove through a snowstorm to get to my house. They both sat with me while I cried and raged and blamed God, and blamed myself for not being in that convoy instead of my son." Cage's jaw tightened. "For 2 years I was a ghost in my own life. Couldn't work, couldn't function. The club kept my business afloat while I fell apart." He turned to face Daniel fully. "Patricia died because the grief was too much. After her funeral, I didn't speak to anyone for 3 months. Wouldn't answer calls, wouldn't leave the house. I was so deep in that hole, I couldn't see daylight. What changed?" Daniel asked quietly. "Reaper broke down my door. Literally. Busted the lock and walked in to find me living in filth, surrounded by empty bottles and pizza boxes. And you know what he said? Cage smiled sadly. He said, "Marcus would be ashamed of you right now, not for grieving, but for giving up." Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. "That's when I realized," Cage continued, "that honoring my son meant living the values he died for. Marcus believed in taking care of his Marines. So if I was going to honor him, I needed to take care of the brothers who were still here, still fighting." There was a knock on the truck window. Christina stood there with 2 cups of coffee. Cage opened the door and she handed them in. "Mind if I join?" she asked. Daniel nodded, and Christina climbed into the truck bed, sitting with her back against the cab so she could face them through the rear window. "I heard some of that," she admitted. "Daniel, can I tell you something I've never told most people?" "Okay. When I came back from Iraq, I was a functioning addict for 3 years. Vicodin at first, then OxyContin, then whatever I could get." Her voice was steady, clinical almost. "I was working as an ER nurse, had access to medications. I diverted drugs meant for patients, falsified records. I convinced myself I needed them more because of my pain, my trauma, my service." Daniel stared at her. This competent, together woman had walked the same dark path? "I got caught," Christina continued. "Lost my nursing license. Got arrested. Spent 4 months in jail. My parents wouldn't speak to me. My brother, also a veteran, told me I'd dishonored our family's military service. I was radioactive. How did you—" Daniel gestured vaguely, unable to finish the question. "The Iron Riders," she said simply. "Reaper found out through the veteran court system. He showed up to my arraignment, sat in the back of the courtroom in his vest, just watching. After sentencing, he waited outside." She took a breath. He said, "You ready to get clean, or do you want to die slow?" But I told him I was ready. He drove me to a VA rehab facility. Visited every week for 6 months, and when I got out, the club helped me find work as an EMT. Took me 3 more years to get my nursing license reinstated. But they were there every step." Christina looked at Daniel directly. "You think you're poison? I stole from dying patients. You think you don't deserve help? I pushed away everyone who mattered. But here's what I learned. Redemption isn't about deserving it. It's about accepting it when it's offered, and doing the hard work to become someone different." Reaper appeared then, leaning against the truck. "Are we having a confession session? Because I have stories that'll make you both feel like saints." Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. "Army Ranger, right?" Daniel asked. "That's right. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Came home with a chest full of medals and a head full of rage." Reaper's expression was grim. "I put my girlfriend in the hospital. PTSD episode. I thought she was an enemy combatant when she touched me while I was sleeping. Broken jaw, fractured orbital bone." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "She pressed charges. I got a year in military prison, dishonorable discharge. Lost everything, my career, my benefits, my identity." Reaper's voice was flat, factual. "Got out and lived on the streets in Las Vegas for 8 months. Fought in underground boxing matches for money. Nearly killed a man in one of those fights. How are you here?" Daniel asked. "How are you the VP of a motorcycle club after all that?" "Because Cage found me bleeding in an alley after a fight went bad. He didn't ask about my past. He asked, 'You done trying to die, or you want to live for something?'" Reaper shrugged. "I chose to live. Been earning that choice every day since." The 3 of them looked at Daniel now, not with judgment, but with understanding born from their own darkness. "We're not offering you help because we think you're perfect," Cage said. "We're offering it because we know you're broken, just like we were, just like we still are some days." Christina added, "The question isn't whether you deserve help. The question is whether you're willing to do the hard work of accepting it and changing." Daniel felt tears streaming down his face. "I'm scared. What if I fail? What if I can't stay clean? What if I take this apartment and this chance, and I screw it all up like I screwed up everything else?" "Then we'll be there to help you get back up," Reaper said firmly. "That's what Brotherhood means. Not that you'll never fall, but that you'll never fall alone." Cage put his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "My son died at 23. He'll never get to screw up again, never get to try and fail and try again. You have that chance. Honor Marcus. Honor all the brothers who didn't make it home by taking that chance. Daniel looked at the apartment keys still clutched in his hand. They felt impossibly heavy, like they weighed 1,000 pounds of responsibility and hope and terror. "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered. "You don't have to know," Christina said gently. "You just have to try." Daniel closed his fist around the keys. "Okay, I'll try." It wasn't a triumphant moment. It was quiet, small, fragile. But it was a beginning. As they prepared to drive Daniel to his new apartment, he looked back at the truck stop where he'd collapsed in desperation just 18 hours earlier. The concrete wall where he'd slept was empty now, just a piece of roadside infrastructure that thousands of travelers passed without notice. But Daniel would never forget it. That wall had been the bottom, the place where his old life ended, and maybe, just maybe, where his new one could begin. Daniel's viral video had done something unexpected. It created demand. The Iron Riders Veteran Outreach Program received 847 requests for assistance in the 6 months following his 1-year anniversary post. The small, informal network that had saved Daniel's life was now overwhelmed with veterans across the Western United States reaching out for help. Cage called an emergency chapter presidents meeting in January 2025. 17 chapter leaders gathered in a Reno conference room to address a problem that was actually an opportunity. "We've got the attention," Cage said, displaying a map covered in red pins, each one representing a veteran who'd contacted them. "What we don't have is infrastructure. We need systems, funding, and people who know how to navigate the bureaucracy." Daniel, sitting in the back of the room, raised his hand. "I might know someone who can help with that." 2 weeks later, Daniel sat across from Senator Patricia Lawson in her Sacramento office. The California senator was a Navy veteran who'd made veteran affairs her signature issue. Daniel had cold-called her office and miraculously gotten through. "Mr. Carter, I watched your video," Senator Lawson said, pouring coffee. "It's been shared in congressional briefings on veteran homelessness. You've done more to humanize this crisis in 3 minutes than most advocates accomplish in years. Senator, we need help creating a legitimate non-profit. The Iron Riders have the will and the people, but we don't have the legal structure to accept grants or work officially with the VA." Senator Lawson made notes. "What if I connected you with my nonprofit coordinator? She's helped establish 3 veteran service organizations in California. I'll also introduce you to potential donors, people who want to invest in solutions that actually work." By March, the Iron Riders Veterans Foundation was officially registered as a 501c3 nonprofit. Daniel served as operations director, a role he'd never imagined himself capable of holding. Christina became medical director, Reaper handled logistics, and Cage served as president. Their mission statement was simple: no veteran sleeps outside. No veteran faces a crisis alone. No veteran gets left behind. The Foundation's first major initiative was the Rapid Response Team, a network of volunteers across 8 states trained to deploy within hours when a veteran in crisis made contact. The system worked like this. A veteran would call or text the hotline. Within 30 minutes, a local Iron Riders member would make contact. Within 2 hours, immediate needs were addressed: food, temporary shelter, medical assessment. Within 24 hours, a comprehensive support plan was in place. The first test came on June 8th, when a text arrived at 2:37 a.m. Found vet under bridge in Fresno. Hypothermia symptoms. Needs immediate help. Daniel, now living with his phone perpetually charged and nearby, saw the message and activated the protocol. Smoke from the Phoenix chapter was closest, only 90 miles away. He mobilized with 2 other members, a medical kit, warm clothes, and emergency funds. By 4:15 a.m., they'd located Marine veteran Travis Sullivan, a 29-year-old Afghanistan vet who'd been homeless for 6 months after a divorce and job loss. By 6 a.m., Travis was in an emergency room being treated. By noon, he had a bed in a transitional housing facility. 2 weeks later, Travis had a job interview lined up and was attending his first group therapy session. "This is what we built," Daniel told Cage after Travis's successful placement. "This is what happens when people actually give a damn." Daniel received an unexpected email that made his hands shake. "Daniel, it's Emily. I saw your video. Can we talk?" They met at a neutral coffee shop in Carson City, both nervous, both older than their years. Emily looked healthier than Daniel remembered, her eyes clear and calm. "I need to say this first," Daniel began. "I'm sorry for everything. For the addiction, the lies, the pain I caused you. You deserve so much better than what I became." Emily's eyes glistened. "I know. I've been in therapy for 2 years, working through the trauma of watching you destroy yourself. I was angry for a long time. You had every right to be." "I did," she agreed. "But watching your video, seeing where you are now, Daniel, I'm proud of you. I needed you to know that. I'm not asking to get back together. That part of our lives is over. But I wanted you to know that I don't hate you anymore." Daniel felt a weight lift that he hadn't known he was still carrying. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They talked for 2 hours. Emily had remarried, a high school teacher named Marcus, which made Daniel smile sadly at the cosmic coincidence. She was happy, stable, building the life she deserved. Before they parted, Emily handed him a small box. "My grandmother's ring. I know you bought it back from the pawn shop. That was your act of redemption, and I respect it. But I want you to have it, not as my ring anymore, but as a reminder of the man you've become." "Emily, I can't." "Yes, you can. Sell it and put the money into your foundation. Help another veteran. Turn our tragedy into someone else's second chance." Daniel held the box, understanding the gift for what it was: absolution, closure, and a blessing to move forward. He sold the ring for $850, and it became the seed money for the Foundation's emergency fund. The Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. They'd helped 127 veterans find housing, assisted 89 with employment placement, connected 156 with addiction treatment services, and provided emergency assistance to 203 veterans in crisis. But Daniel knew numbers didn't tell the whole story. The real impact was in the transformed individual lives. There was Gerald Thompson, a 67-year-old Vietnam veteran who'd been homeless for 12 years. The Foundation helped him secure VA housing and reconnect with his estranged daughter. They'd reconciled, and Gerald became a grandfather for the first time at 68. There was Monica Alvarez, an Air Force veteran who'd struggled with PTSD after military sexual trauma. Christina personally mentored her through recovery, and Monica now worked as a victim's advocate at a women's shelter. There was Kevin Price, a young Army veteran who'd attempted suicide 3 times. The Rapid Response Team intervened during his 4th crisis, got him into intensive treatment, and he was now 18 months into recovery. Working as a peer counselor, each story represented what Daniel had learned: that rock bottom wasn't the end. It was just the place where you could finally start building something real. Daniel stood before a congressional subcommittee on veteran affairs in Washington, D.C., something he'd never imagined in his wildest dreams. Senator Lawson had invited him to testify about community-based approaches to veteran homelessness. "Mr. Carter," the committee chairman asked, "your foundation reports a 94% success rate in preventing return to homelessness among veterans you assist. The VA's national average is 67%. What's your secret?" Daniel thought about Cage sitting with him all night in a parking lot, about Christina Reaper and countless others who'd refused to let him give up. "It's not complicated, sir. We treat veterans like family, not case numbers. We respond immediately, not after months of bureaucratic processing. And we stick with them through the setbacks, not just the victories. Brotherhood isn't a program you can budget for. It's a commitment you make and keep." The testimony was covered by national media. Donations to the foundation tripled overnight. But the moment Daniel was proudest of came 2 weeks later, when a young Marine veteran named Ryan Foster called the hotline from a rest stop in Utah. He was homeless, addicted, and considering ending his life. Daniel drove 4 hours through a snowstorm to reach him. He found Ryan sitting on a bench, staring at a bottle of pills in one hand and his discharge papers in the other. Daniel sat down beside him without saying a word for 5 full minutes. Finally, Ryan spoke. "Why are you here?" "Because 2 years ago I was you, and someone showed up for me when I didn't think I was worth showing up for." Daniel held out his hand. "My name is Daniel Carter. I'm a Marine, I'm a recovering addict, and I'm here to tell you that your story doesn't end on this bench." Ryan looked at Daniel's outstretched hand for what felt like forever. Then he took it. 3 months later, Ryan was working construction on one of Daniel's job sites, living in transitional housing, and attending the same therapy group that had saved Daniel's life. The foundation established its most ambitious project yet, the Guardian House, a transitional living facility in Reno that could house 12 veterans simultaneously. It provided 6 months of stable housing, case management, therapy access, and job training. The grand opening ceremony drew hundreds of people. Cage cut the ribbon. Christina gave a speech about healing. Reaper announced that 5 chapters in other states were planning their own Guardian houses, but Daniel did something different. He invited Travis Sullivan, the Marine they'd rescued from under the Fresno Bridge, to speak about his journey. Travis, now 10 months sober and working as a substance abuse counselor, told his story with the same raw honesty Daniel had shown in his viral video. 9 months ago, I wanted to die under that bridge. Today, I'm helping other veterans choose life. That's what this place represents. Not charity, but transformation. Not pity, but possibility. As the ceremony ended and families toured the facility, Daniel stood in the parking lot looking at Marcus's red Softail. Cage still brought it to every major foundation event. A young woman approached him, maybe 25, wearing a Marine Corps t-shirt. "Mr. Carter, I'm Sarah Mitchell." "Marcus Mitchell was my uncle, Cage's son." Daniel felt his breath catch. "He was?" "I was 11 when he died. I'm a Marine now too, serving at Camp Pendleton. I wanted to thank you." Her voice cracked. "My dad told me what you've built, how Uncle Marcus's bike and my dad's grief somehow saved your life, and now you're saving others." "That means Uncle Marcus's death wasn't meaningless." Daniel couldn't speak for a moment. Then he found his voice. "Your uncle saved my life before I even knew his name. Everything I do is honoring that gift." Sarah hugged him. And Daniel understood something profound. Healing wasn't linear, and impact rippled far beyond what you could see. Marcus Mitchell died in 2013, but through Cage's grief, Daniel's redemption, and now Sarah's pride in her uncle's legacy, he was still saving lives 12 years later. The Love's truck stop parking lot looked different this morning, where 3 years ago a single homeless Marine had collapsed in desperation. Now stood a permanent memorial, a bronze statue of a Marine in dress blues, kneeling beside a Harley Davidson, one hand extended in offering. The plaque read, "No one gets left behind, dedicated to every veteran still fighting the battle at home." Over 500 people had gathered for the 3rd annual Morning Guard commemoration. Iron Riders from 14 states, active duty military, Gold Star families, formerly homeless veterans who'd found their way back, and civilians who'd been moved by Daniel's story. Cage stood at the podium, his voice carrying across the desert morning. 3 years ago, I found a Marine sleeping next to my dead son's motorcycle. I was angry at first. Then I saw his Purple Heart and realized Marcus had led me to exactly where I needed to be." He paused, scanning the crowd. "We started with one veteran. Today, the Iron Riders Veterans Foundation operates in 11 states. We've assisted 783 veterans. We run 4 Guardian houses, with 3 more under construction. And most importantly, we've changed the national conversation about how we treat the people who served this country." Daniel stood off to the side, uncomfortable with public attention even after 3 years of advocacy work. He'd rather be in the field responding to crisis calls sitting with veterans in their darkest moments. But Christina caught his eye and mouthed, "Your turn." He stepped to the microphone, looking at the faces before him. Some he knew intimately, others he'd never met, but who'd been touched by the ripple effect of one cold October night. "I'm not good at speeches," Daniel began, his voice steady despite his nerves, "but I'm good at telling the truth. So here it is. 3 years ago I wanted to die. Not dramatically, not as a statement. I just wanted the pain to stop. Physical pain, emotional pain, the shame of what I'd become." The crowd was silent, every eye on him. "I'd lost my wife, my home, my career, my dignity. I'd convinced myself that the world would be better without me in it. And on October 14th, 2023, I laid down next to a stranger's motorcycle planning to let hypothermia take me because I didn't have the courage to do it faster." He looked at Cage. "But God, or Marcus, or fate, or whatever you believe in, had different plans. A grieving father found me and decided I was worth saving, not because I deserved it. I didn't, but because Brotherhood doesn't measure worthiness. It just shows up." Daniel's voice grew stronger. "In the 3 years since that night, I've learned some things. I learned that rock bottom can be a foundation if someone helps you build on it. I learned that the worst moment of your life doesn't have to define the rest of it. And I learned that saving one person can save hundreds, because rescued people rescue people." He gestured to the crowd. "Travis Sullivan is here. We pulled him from under a bridge in Fresno. He's now a counselor helping other addicts. Monica Alvarez is here. Christina mentored her through PTSD recovery. She now advocates for assault survivors. Ryan Foster is here. I talked him down from suicide in a Utah parking lot. He's studying to be a therapist." Daniel pointed to a section where dozens of formerly homeless veterans stood together, wearing matching Guardian House t-shirts. These are the people who weren't supposed to make it. Society wrote them off. Some of them wrote themselves off. But they're here, they're thriving, and they're helping the next person who needs it. That's the real story of the Morning Guard. Not what happened to me, but what happened because of me. Reaper stepped forward, holding a leather vest. "Daniel Carter, 3 years ago, you were given an honorary Iron Riders patch. Today, we're making it official. You've earned full membership through service, sacrifice, and leadership." Daniel's hands shook as he accepted the vest, with his name embroidered above the Guardian Angel designation. He'd never ridden a motorcycle in his life, but that wasn't what membership meant. It meant family. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed into smaller groups sharing coffee and conversation, a man in his 50s approached Daniel. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent considerable time outside. "Mr. Carter? My name is Philip Chen. I'm Ahmed's brother-in-law, the translator who died in Afghanistan." Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. I'm so sorry. "That day I should have—" Philip held up a hand. "I didn't come here for apologies. I came to say thank you. Thank you. I don't understand. Ahmed's daughter Layla is 20 now. She lives in California, goes to college. When she learned about your foundation, she told me she wanted to meet the Marine who tried to save her father. She said, if Daniel Carter hadn't found those other 3 bombs, my entire family would have died that day. He saved my mother's life. He saved mine." Philip pulled out his phone, showing a photo of a beautiful young woman in a graduation cap. "This is Layla from last month. She's studying social work because she wants to help refugees adapt to American life. She says her father would be proud that his sacrifice made it possible for a Marine to come home and save hundreds of other veterans." Daniel couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face. "Ahmed's death wasn't your failure," Philip said gently. "It was war's cruelty. But what you've done since, honoring survivors by helping them survive, that's Ahmed's legacy too." As Philip walked away, Daniel felt a weight he'd carried for 13 years finally lift. The guilt wouldn't vanish completely, it never did, but it had transformed into something else, purpose, meaning, a reason to keep fighting. Cage appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You okay?" "More than okay." Daniel accepted the coffee. "I just realized something. Marcus didn't just save me that night. He saved everyone we've helped since. Every veteran in a Guardian house, every crisis call we answered, every life we changed. That all started because you loved your son enough to honor his values, even in your grief. Cage's eyes glistened. Marcus would have liked you. You've got the same stubborn refusal to quit that got him through boot camp. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the memorial statue catch the morning light. The kneeling Marine's bronze hand stretched toward the Harley, frozen in an eternal moment of connection. "What's next?" Cage asked. "We've got funding for 6 more Guardian houses. Senator Lawson is pushing federal legislation based on our model. You could run this foundation full-time." Daniel thought about it. "I want to stay in the field. Let Christina and the others handle administration. I need to be the person who shows up at 3 a.m. when someone's standing on the edge. Because I remember what it felt like when someone showed up for me." "Fair enough." Cage raised his coffee cup. "To Marcus, to Ahmed, to all the brothers who didn't make it home, but somehow still save lives." Daniel clinked his cup against Cage's. "And to the ones who did make it home but needed help finding their way back." As the sun climbed higher over the Nevada desert, Daniel watched families take photos with the memorial statue. Children climbed on the bronze Harley, while their veteran parents explained what Brotherhood meant. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, asked her father, "Daddy, why is the Marine giving his hand to the motorcycle man?" Her father, wearing an Army veteran cap, knelt down. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, the bravest thing a person can do is accept help when they need it. And sometimes the greatest thing a person can do is offer help when someone else needs it." The little girl studied the statue thoughtfully. "Is that why you always stop when you see people who need help?" "That's exactly why." Daniel smiled, understanding that the Morning Guard's impact would ripple forward in ways he'd never witness. Children learning compassion, veterans finding hope, families staying intact because someone answered a 3 a.m. crisis call. His phone buzzed. A text from the hotline, "Veteran in distress, Elko, Nevada. Says he can't go on. Needs immediate response." Daniel showed the message to Cage, who nodded. "Go! That's why we're here." As Daniel walked toward his truck, the one the foundation provided for his outreach work, he passed Marcus's red Softail, still polished and pristine, still serving as a reminder of why this all mattered. He paused, placing his hand on the seat where he'd collapsed 3 years ago. "Thank you, Marcus," he whispered. "For showing your dad what mattered. For leading him to me. For starting something that won't end as long as we're still breathing." The engine rumbled to life. Daniel pulled onto Interstate 80, heading east toward Elko, toward another veteran in crisis, toward another chance to prove that no one gets left behind. Behind him, the memorial statue stood watch over the parking lot, where one man's worst night had become the catalyst for hundreds of second chances. The Morning Guard would continue, not because of one dramatic rescue, but because rescued people rescue people. And somewhere, on some cold night, another veteran would collapse in desperation, wondering if anyone cared whether they lived or died. And someone would show up, because that's what Brotherhood means, not leaving anyone behind. Not in war, not in peace, not ever. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.